Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Capacity to change. As I leant against the cold brick wall of one of the many little shops in Canterbury High Street, with its cobblestone ground, little cafes everywhere, and plenty of university students, I just watched people go about their business in the busy university city. The air was amazingly fresh with the hints of pine, designer coffee from the local coffee shops, and the strange combination of all the wonderful brands of aftershave and perfumes the students wore. That all combined to leave a strange, but rather pleasant taste of refreshing mint on my tongue. I always had loved Canterbury, that little historic city in the south of England that no one actually cared about, remembered, or did too much with. But I had gone to university, lost my virginity here too, and just fell in love with the city. So when I became a superhero in the counseling and therapy sector, I knew exactly where I wanted to return to. I had to come back to the place I love, and with there being 3 universities close by, I just knew that there would never be a shortage of people who needed my help. It really just makes me smile now, because before I became a superhero, I was a mental health doctor and worked for the National Health Service, but the amount of myths and stigma and other awful things I faced on a daily basis was ridiculous. All because people believed psychology wasn't a real science and therapy was useless, and I was only good at profiling people. Hell, psychology isn't profiling. Profiling is shit. But I really do laugh at it all now, because it turned out that a bunch of my superhero powers are versions of the psychology myths. And they are pretty cool. I can know everything about a person just by what they say, I can read their minds, and I can influence them if I really want to. Being a superhero is great. So that was what I was doing today. I was simply walking around Canterbury wanting to find someone who needed my help. Of course, I always hoped when I went out that I wouldn't find anyone. I always had hated seeing people in pain. But there were always people needing my help. As all the young university students laughed and talked and listened to the street musicians, I couldn't help but start to feel like something was off ever so slightly. I focused on all the people walking up and down the high street, and noticed that one particular man in the crowd was giving off a slightly red aura. That was definitely still a superpower I was getting used to. Seeing people's auras was still so strange to me, but I was sure that this person was in deep trouble. I slowly started to glide through the crowd towards him and I just stopped. A few people bumped into me and started to look annoyed, but I just focused on my smile and that seemed to make them happy, so they went on with their day. I stepped back out of the crowd so I wouldn't bump into anyone else, and I was right. I recognized that particular man with his middle-aged fit body, long black beard and expensive look. He was another superhero. Yes, he worked in the gambling sector. I couldn't remember for the life of me what his name was, but I had worked with him decades ago, on helping a young woman off her gambling addiction. But I couldn't understand why this man wasn't okay. And the red aura was still troubling. Normally when people were sad, annoyed or depressed, they just looked it, and my superpowers would direct me in their direction. There was none of this red aura stuff. So why was he giving off a red aura, and what did it mean? With me being a relatively new superhero, at least when compared to those who had been one since ancient times, I just knew that I was going to need help, superhero help. Octavia! I shouted. A few people looked at me weirdly, and I quickly realized that I had to stop doing that in public. But a few moments later, everyone around me sort of became blurry, and then one of the most stunning women I had ever seen just appeared, and everyone in the high street just acted like she had always been there. Now I was definitely into both men and women, and whilst I seriously leant more towards men most of the time, Octavia was definitely one of those women that made me question myself. She was that stunning. I had always loved her stunningly fit body without an ounce of body fat, her long wavy brown hair, and just her smile. Believe me, that smile could honestly melt the ice caps without any help from global warming. So yay, she really was that stunning and damn well hot. Matilda, darling, Octavia said with a massive smile. Octavia was probably the first ever superhero I met decades ago, during my own transformation into a full superhero. She had worked in a few different sectors of the superhero world, and now I knew she was currently working in the gambling sector, and helped out there. If anyone would know what was going on with that red aura man, it would be Octavia. So I just pointed to him, and Octavia's face just dropped.
Well, my darling, that is hardly a good aura, Octavia said. I had heard a rumor he was bad.
Then Octavia just started to look me up and down, and smiled. God, that smile could make me do anything. Matilda, darling, are you free for a little helping? Octavia asked. I just smiled.
What's going on?
Octavia gestured us to glide into the crowd and walk with everyone else as we spoke, but I knew she wanted to stay close to the red aura man. I just didn't know why. His name is Jackson Ellis. A superhero in the gambling sector, a very good one from what I heard, but he has a problem. I just shook my head. Saying that people had problems was so horrible, demeaning, and so last century. Modern-day mental health preferred to describe that as difficulties, since these problems were just a part of a person, but they should be changed to help them have less problematic behavior. But I decided this wasn't the time for details with sexy Octavia. Is that why you started working with the gambling sector? I asked. Octavia nodded.
Yes, Jackson went missing. Superhero work needed to be done, so I stepped up. What is his difficulty?
I asked. A few people bumped into us and knocked Octavia into my arms. That was a very pleasurable accident. She quickly stood up and got back to walking with the crowd. Shame. He has what professional gamblers call a leak. I bit my lip and nodded. I had treated plenty of gambling addicts over the decades in my practice, and I had come to understand that there was real skill involved in poker, and you could actually win a lot of money playing it. Yet you were stupid to try and play and win at blackjack, the slot machines and the other games in casinos where the house would rig the odds in its favor. That's why professional gamblers never played those sorts of games. Clearly Jackson wasn't as professional as I thought, and it was clearly affecting his mental health.
How much has he lost?
I asked. He's homeless. His kids and parents and wife won't talk to him, and he is about to be fired as a superhero. I just stopped dead in my tracks. Lots of people bumped into and swore, but I used my calming superpowers to make them happy. I pulled Octavia against a window of a small supermarket, near the edge of the high street. Before now, I didn't know that could actually happen. Superheroes were superheroes. I didn't think we could get fired or anything.
How do I help him?
I asked. Octavia frowned. Damn, even with her frowning she was hot as hell. He is another one of your clients, as you like to call them. Treat him and see if he wants to get better. Then call me with your results. With that, everyone round me became blurry once more, and then Octavia was gone. I always liked it how easy and straightforward people made therapy sound, but even as a superhero, it still took time. I looked back into the crowd of people, and saw Jackson was lighting a cigarette and walking towards me. His red aura started to get bigger and darker. Then as he stood next to me, I instantly recognized the smell as weed. He wasn't just smoking a cigarette, he was trying to get stoned. I went over to him and gently tapped his shoulder. I didn't always need people to talk to me, to be able to analyze them and see all their thoughts. And all I had expected to see in Jackson's mind was some gambling difficulties, a need for thrills, and maybe something going on in his personal life.
But this was something else.
Jackson was a massive drug addict, and I was amazed he wasn't brain dead with the amount of weed he smoked every day.
But that's why he loved being a superhero, because it took tons of weed to start affecting him.
Then he used his poker winnings to buy drugs, and when they weren't enough, he started to play the slots to get more. Yet he only lost.
"What your prob, girl?"
Jackson said, clearly starting to get stoned. I focused my calming and trusting superpowers on him, and he slowly started to look at me like a friend. "You really should stop doing drugs," I said softly. With my hand still on his shoulder, I felt my minor command sink into his mind, but his face didn't look impressed. He didn't want to stop doing drugs, and as much as I wanted to do properly therapy with him, I really didn't like the color of his aura. It seemed like the more he smoked, the red it got. And even the aura was starting to turn black around the edges. Black meant death. As much as I didn't want to even start to admit it, I was really starting to believe that Jackson was going to die or end himself by tomorrow morning. I almost couldn't blame him. He had no friends left in the superhero world, his family refused to talk to him, and he was in extreme amounts of gambling debt. He had nothing to live for. So I decided I needed to try a more direct path. "I'm Matilda Plum, superhero in the counseling and therapy sector," I said, extending my hand. Jackson's eyes looked a little distant, but he barely managed to shake my hand. "Jackson, superhero of? I don't know. A sector. People are worried about you, Jackson. They love you, so why don't you tell me why you're doing this destruction to yourself?" Jackson seemed to frown and smile, and want to cry at the minor reminder of the damage he had caused. I focused my superpowers on making him want to feel like he wanted to change his ways.
"I just needed the thrills," he said.
"Poker gets old quickly. I wanna smoke." He just started laughing as he smoked more and more. I knew I was going to have to do something a bit extreme, but I didn't feel like I had another option. I focused every ounce of influencing superpower to make him feel sick whenever he thought, looked, or tasted any sort of drug, even caffeine. Extreme, I know, but I had to save him from himself. He just started coughing and stamped out the cigarette. His aura only started to get darker and darker around the edges. Then I implanted the suggestion of all the superheroes that were missing him, caring about him, and wanted him to be okay deep into his mind. He slowly smiled. "They really care about me." I wrapped an arm around his shoulder. "Of course. They're worried sick about you. They just want you to be okay, and back being the amazing superhero you were." As Jackson just stared out into space for a few moments, I wondered if the drugs had already taken effect too well. But he just sort of smiled and nodded. "I want to see them too," Jackson said.
"What I need to do?"
I folded my arms and wondered about that myself. His difficulty was clearly caused by the drugs and gambling, so if I could get him away completely from all of that for a while, so we could work on the other causes and anything else that might be causing his addiction, then that would work. He would have to be away from the internet, online poker, other people, and everything else that could possibly make him relapse whilst he focused on me and his recovery. But it could work. I actually might even know a great place we could stay for a while. "You know," I said to Jackson, "my boss Natalia, the goddess of counseling and therapy, owns a wonderful villa on the coast of Italy. We could stay for a month or two for your therapy. There's plenty of sun, sand, and that sea view is just stunning." Jackson really looked like he was going to hate it, and I honestly thought he was going to say no. But he started nodding, still frowning, and gestured that he should get going.
"You sure you want to help your addiction?"
I asked. "Of course. I want to be back with my superhero friends and helping them out," he said. But I just couldn't believe his heart was in it entirely, yet, as a superhero, I had to try and help him as much as I could, even if his heart wasn't completely in it. Now I had wanted to spend 2 months with Jackson in that wonderful Italian villa, so we could work on everything. And I mean everything. But that seriously hadn't happened, and I was rather furious actually. I walked into Octavia's large black office that was decorated in wonderful black tones, pictures of famous poker games, and she was sitting at her massive black desk. I had to admit she looked stunning, sexy and just perfect in her little red dress that made her look so dangerous and alluring. "Matilda darling, this is unexpected," Octavia said. I just frowned at her. I always had a rule, whenever I did these sorts of things with people like Jackson. The rule was simple, they could leave at any time, because I was a therapist, I was not a prison guard. But that always became risky when I was dealing with people as problematic as Jackson.
Not in the slightest, I said.
His drug and gambling addiction is far worse than I ever imagined, and there is a reason why he doesn't want to stay. Octavia leant closer. Why? Because whenever people come to therapy, they have to be willing to change their behaviors, because it is their behavior that is causing the problem. Jackson will never change or be willing to change. Octavia folded her arms. You've done everything you can. My eyebrows rose. I was so used to being questioned in my methods because I had a psychology degree, I didn't know why I still reacted, but I had to admit, it did hurt each and every time someone questioned me for no good reason. I nodded. Octavia stood there, and then paced round her office for a few moments. Thank you, Octavia said with a killer smile. Me, the other gambling superheroes and the god of gambling himself thanks you.
What will happen to him?
I asked. I've already dropped him off at a casino in London, because he demanded it. Octavia kept smiling at me, and I couldn't help but feel like it was the sort of smile you give someone you wanted to do, and hard. I will report to the god of gambling, and he will most properly fire Jackson and make him a normal person again, Octavia said before she disappeared. I just wished I could do something else, this felt like such a failure, but I could honestly say I had tried everything with Jackson. But he just didn't want to change. 2 weeks later, I was walking along the wonderful cobblestone high street of Canterbury on a breathtakingly warm evening with the sounds of musicians playing, students drinking and talking when I got the news. Jackson Ellis had been found dead by a heroin overdose a few hours before, and as the air was filled with great hints of alcohol, rich Italian food and freshly baked garlic bread, I knew that there was nothing that I could have done. You see, as a therapist and superhero, it is my job to do my best with whoever I have to deal with. I love it. I get to help people improve their lives, stop their distress and help them in ways no one else can. 99% of the time, the job was amazing, and it was more like play rather than work. Because it was so fun, and I absolutely loved it. But it was days like this when my hard work didn't pay off that honestly just felt shitty. And like everything I did just didn't matter, and I was nothing more than a failure. Yet I was never that. I always did my best, helped tons of people, and most of all I allowed people to make their own choices. With all my superpowers I could easily bend people to my will, but I didn't. Because it was wrong, and I really do believe in one particular therapy concept. Everyone has to have a capacity to change. And Jackson Ellis did not. He didn't want to help his addiction, so he was always going to end up like this, sadly. I truly hated that fact. But as I started to walk along the high street again, looking for someone else to help, I just knew there would be another time, another person, another opportunity to help someone. And that time, I would be able to. All because that person would have a capacity to change.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the internet engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested. And you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ConnorWhiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteley Verse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.